American hostage Luke Summers, a freelance photographer, was killed late Friday during a rescue attempt by U.S. Special Forces. Now, Summers was abducted last year and was being held by al-Qaeda in Yemen. The murder raises new questions about how the U.S. military will be able to respond to a spike in overseas kidnappings by terrorists. With me now, the founder of the investigative project, Steve Emerson, and former CIA covert operation officer Mike Baker. All right, Mike, we've got two rescue attempts, the American hostage dead. Is there some truth to what the White House says about our intel not being as good as it should be?
Well, you know, it's an odd thing to say if they are, in fact, you know, pushing and saying, well, look, it wasn't us. Part of it is their concern that they were getting some flack for not approving the initial unsuccessful raid quick enough. And you could argue that, look, you control very little in a hostage rescue situation. Intel is never perfect in any of these things. We tend to be conditioned by feature films and beach books to think that this is just a pretty simple thing. You find your target, you go, you rescue them. And we have had a very good success rate. But things go wrong, and you can never guarantee success when you're talking about an operation like this.
All right, Steve, in the same question, is it good to say that we couldn't find the guy twice?
Well, you know, it's not good to say it, but on the other hand, I will give them credit for actually trying to carry out the operations, especially for a president that has chewed, you know, extrajudicial operations. I'm glad they're doing it, but the reality is, as Mike pointed out, you know, you're relying on local intelligence initially, and that local intelligence is going to shift, and it's not going to stay. It's going to be. It's not going to stay stagnant. So it's going to shift, and you're not going to be able to rely on it when you're on the ground immediately. Right. However, the reality is, it does put us in a position where we're seen as a paper tiger now. Number two, they're going to take precautions now to make it almost impossible now to rescue other hostages.
That was my point, Steve. And Mike, I'm sure you would agree with me. There's no point in saying we tried but didn't get them, other than to tell the enemy, you know what, we're coming after our guys. But, Steve, I want to ask you a question. Then, Mike, I'm going to go back to you. The group behind this, Steve, is al-Qaeda. We're not talking ISIS now. We're not talking Syria and Iraq. How are these guys different from ISIS?
Well, they're not different from ISIS. Actually, they're in competition. And what they realized is that ISIS enriched itself by the tune of tens of millions of dollars by taking hostages and getting them to be paid by ransom money. This is exactly what was going on with this set of hostages. They were going to get paid ransom money and had a set of demands. And al-Qaeda realized they also were getting, ISIS were getting a lot of fame and recruitment. So now they were in competition. So now it's open season on Americans around the world. So al-Qaeda now is in rivalry with ISIS and the same type of tactics, and you can be sure that al-Qaeda is going to be killing Americans no matter where they are, not necessarily directed by al-Qaeda core, but you know, by al-Qaeda inspired people, like in Abu Dhabi, as we saw just last week, a woman who was killed, and Americans killed in the Sinai, like the Israelis have been killed around the world.
All right, and Mike, it seems, as Steve is saying, that Americans are going to be more at risk of being taken hostage. What can we do about this?
Well, Americans and our allies, you know, Westerners all over, but we do what we continue to do. I mean, it's a little unusual to say also that, you know, well, you know, this unsuccessful raid makes us a paper tiger. It doesn't make us a paper tiger. It's just the reality of it. Again, you know, every operation, every hostage rescue attempt presents its own difficulties. And we have the best trained personnel in the world in trying to conduct these operations. But I think we've gotten to this place in our lives where the administration and everyone else wants a zero-risk world. Well, it doesn't work that way.
All right, I understand that, Mike, that you want to take that side, but I think when you tell the world that, you know, we tried and we lost twice, there's no point in it. It does make us look weak.
Well, of course
real
there's a point in it.
Hillary Clinton thinks we need to empathize with our enemies. What do you think, Steve? Real fast, coming up against a heartbreak.
I think we should empathize with our friends first, you know.
Mike?
You know, and that's the problem.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Steve and Mike, thanks for being with us. And coming up, after months of warning by scientists, politicians, and yours truly, finally, something is being done to protect our grid. But is it enough? That's coming up next.